Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. It's me, Nkoyo, that Ed Law lady, and I'm signing on for today's Thursday thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm in my feelings today, so I'm late, so I apologize for showing up late to my own show. How crazy is that, right? But I was like, I don't know if I can do this today because I don't know that I have all of the positivity and energy um, to give to you all today. But alas, here we are. We're going to make it do what it do. So today's topic, we are going to be discussing back to school in a pandemic and some of the lessons learned from back to school 2020. So for those of you who are tuning in who might not be in Georgia, many of our school districts have already returned to school. Some of them this week was their first full week, or they're going into their second week. And so we have had some interesting developments here across the state. Some schools have already had to quarantine because there was a rise in students testing positive for COVID. So we have some schools that opened with very few precautions in place. You've probably seen on the national news schools where the students are all just meandering around as though nothing is happening, and those schools have had to close down. I think there are at least two in that county that are quarantining until August 31st, and then I guess they'll try it again, or maybe try with different strategies in place to try to limit the spread of the virus. So we have folks who are starting in that scenario, and then we've had other folks who they've gone this all virtual remote route and had difficulty signing in with technology, being able to log in, get to where they needed to be on time. So across the board, the start has been bumpy, and I think that's to be expected, like when we're trying to do something new in a new environment. And so I want to share some thoughts that I have around that, 5 of them in particular. I don't know if I'll get through all 5, but that's the hope. 3 things that I'm learning so far, just in general about, how to move when things are different, and really change management and things being different. So if you are on here, definitely shoot me a comment. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're checking in from. And I'll get ready to, we'll rock and roll. So again, today's topic is back to school, lessons learned from back to school 2020, or back to school in a pandemic, what that looks like, what, maybe we can extrapolate from this experience to hopefully improve education ultimately. So, yeah, that's that. And again, if you're new to me, I'm an education attorney and education advocate. I am out here trying to advocate unapologetically for equity, excellence, and education justice alongside communities of color. So everything that I do is really rooted in that aim of making sure that students who in particular have been historically marginalized or disenfranchised, or not wanted to be educated, or not being allowed to be educated in our public education system, have access. I truly do believe that education is the great equalizer, that it has the ability to transform the trajectory of someone's life. And so we should give every child, regardless of race, class, sex, or ability, that opportunity to learn, grow, and develop into their absolute best self. So 5 things I've learned so far. 1, science matters. I know that a lot of things right now are very politicized, and it's like, oh, you're being fearful, or this, that, and the other. But I mean, schools are opening and closing because children are contracting this virus. Adults are contracting this virus. They're taking this virus and spreading it to who knows how many other people. And so we can say that it doesn't exist, that this is some side of hoax, etc. But like, people actually are dying. People are getting sick. People's lives are being changed. Even if they don't die from this virus, there are so many more information coming out around some of the longer term effects of having had COVID-19. So in a space where children are essentially reflecting what we are putting into them, we have an onus to show them that the same classes and courses that we are telling them they need to take and learn because it's so important for whatever reasons, that we're actually taking that into consideration also. So it's amazing to me that we would be teaching children biology, we would be teaching them things related to science, and then simultaneously saying that like science isn't real. So which one is it, right? Like, why is this part of the curriculum if it doesn't matter, if we're not going to apply it in our lives? Because I truly believe we should teach children the things that we think matter, that are important, that are going to be useful for them in their lives. So science is a part of the curriculum across every school in Georgia, to my knowledge, as well as in many different states. And so I would hope that our elected officials, our board members, our schools, our politicians, etc., would be considering the science when we're making these decisions about putting children in harm's way. And, to me as a mother, it's not comforting to know that, like, well, they're not dying from it, especially when this virus is so new and we don't know what the long-term effects of it are. So if you're going to open up schools, I think it makes more sense to open them up aligned to what, our best thinking around science and pandemics, et cetera, has to make that work. And the downside of not thinking or applying science to our approach is schools are opening and then closing. And as a parent who's running a business, who has, other things to do during the day, I can't imagine this being less disruptive than actually just choosing to go remote and being able to actually plan and figure out how we provide the services to all students and in the way that they need to receive it, versus saying like, go back to school and then every 2 weeks, indefinitely we open and close schools. Like, that cannot be beneficial. That's going to be very difficult for like the continuity of learning for teachers who are trying to make, and students who are trying to learn across this, to start, open up, shut down. And, we tend to try to think that we're machines and separate from our emotions. But I'm also just concerned about the psychological stressors that puts on children to go to school, not know if school's going to be open the next day, if it's going to close down, if someone in their class has gotten the virus, if maybe they have the virus. Like, it's just a lot. And I feel like we could do better for everyone if we would just align ourselves with science, a course that we require kids to take from kindergarten on up to 12th grade. There are science classes. So if we believe it's important for the curriculum, I think we should apply some of that to how we're running schools. Second, and sort of aligned to that, is, elections have consequences. A lot of people like think that there's like separation between things that are political or not. I'm of the school of thought that like everything is political in some ways, that we are not actual neutral human beings. There's all sorts of studies out there, research that shows that like we don't make great decisions. We align ourselves with like confirmation bias. And so if we believe something is supposed to go a certain way, we pick out the facts that align to that. I was actually just on a training for mediators and facilitators. We were talking again about the ladder of inference, and how, at the very bottom of the ladder are, sort of like the facts or the, whatever has happened, right? The information that's available. And as we go up that ladder of inference, we assign different meanings to different things and then arrive at a certain inference or assumption or belief that may not align with, what was there at the base in the first place. And people can come to different conclusions about that. So all things are sort of connected, right? We're not neutral bodies. We're not logical. I was in a law school. We always talk about the reasonable man. And what we have seen, a lot of the critique that comes out in even critical legal theory, is that like people are irrational. We don't make decisions based on logic a lot of times, right? Like, we are not as methodical as we would like to think. But I say all that to say, I'm going to make this political statement here. And, that bothers you, you can always unfollow, etc. But like, elections have consequences, and not just at the presidential level, which there are definitely consequences there, positive and negative. But also, even smaller elections people don't think matter, like your school board members, right? Like, who's on your county commission, who are sitting in the judgeship seats, who are is elected sheriffs, and prosecutors in those places where those positions are voted upon. Like, elections have consequences. They really truly shape the way things go in our communities. And in the education space, when we are thinking about how our elected official, our board members are ones making the decision around, you know, whether they're going to, who they're going to choose as the superintendent to run the school district, how, you know, they're going to either approve or disapprove of the decisions that that individual makes, etc. Like, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to who is sitting in these seats, especially at the local level, because they have the most impact and influence over your life. So I feel like in some counties where representation is not necessarily reflective of the community, you see such a strong separation around what the board is doing and who those decisions serve versus others. And so I think that that's like incredibly important to really just be thinking about who are these people who we are putting in positions of power, sometimes unchecked power, who are given the authority to make decisions over our daily lives, and really being mindful of that as we go into a big election year. But making sure that you know who's on the ballot, down the ballot, not just who's at the top of the ballot, but like who are the people underneath and what do they believe? Because those things definitely impact what happens in classrooms across the country. And so it's really important to just recognize that education doesn't sit separate and apart from all of the other sectors of our society. It is, in my opinion, education is at the root of everything. It's connected to absolutely everything. And therefore, we want to be mindful of the decisions that we're making. Jumping, so again, science matters, elections have consequences. These are the things that I've learned from this back to school 2020 in the pandemic. I will reserve my true feelings about like what this is, but it's a hot mess. I'm not going to reserve them, to be honest. I think what we have going on right now is a hot flaming mess. 3, flexibility is required, right? Whether you're in person, remote, you're going to have to be flexible. This school year is not going to look like any other school year that we've had so far. It's not even going to necessarily reflect what happened in the spring. Hopefully, school districts have gotten a little bit better, hopefully a lot better at what they're delivering, but it's not going to be the same. So, and personally, I'm okay with that because I don't think that what we were doing before was really that great. Like, if I'm honest, like, the data suggests, like, if we're looking at this internationally on a global perspective, like, our education system isn't really that awesome. And it survives on making sure that some people are getting better education than others, but not ensuring that everybody is getting an excellent education. So I don't really think that most students in public schools, whether you're in a wealthy district or not, are really getting an excellent education. I just think you're getting something a little bit better than like what somebody else is getting. But we've never actually defined what excellence means. And I think that this opportunity through this pandemic is really is an opportunity for us to really push forward and figure out what excellence would look like and how we deliver that in a differentiated manner, different way to reach all learners rather than just trying to do the same thing for everyone or whole groups of people who need different things. I think the pandemic gives us the opportunity to see what else is available, and whether that's because we are doing everybody's learning at the same time, or maybe we're learning at different times in different ways. I really feel like there's an opportunity to leverage technology, leverage creativity, and be innovative about how we deliver instruction to actually make sure that children are learning and growing and that they're at the center. So flexibility matters, because it's going to come with a lot of ups and downs, failures. Like, it's not going to be perfect. It really is not. And I wish that we had an education system and a culture that embraced failure. It's always like, I don't even use the word, but sometimes you have to test and tweak. You have to try something out and see that it doesn't work to be able to come up with the next idea that gets you closer to something better. And as a person in business, like, that is 1,000% true. I think in life, like, a lot of times we learn more from our failures than from our successes. And it's equally important to learn what works as it is to learn what doesn't work. And so being flexible, recognizing it's not going to be perfect, but that doesn't necessarily give us license to assault teachers or educators, et cetera, who are in the same situation with us. Like, they don't have all the answers. This is brand new for everybody. So we have to be flexible. We have to be willing to adapt. We need to be resilient. And I think that's an important life skill. That brings me to number 4, which is, quality education is a team sport. Like, we're all in this together, whether we like it or not, like you and your child's teachers and all the other administrators, the school board, the faculty and staff, the custodians, the bus drivers, like, we're all on the same group project. And so we would do and go much further faster if we would figure out how to align and work with each other rather than sort of villainizing or punishing or blaming each other for where things don't work. So if something's not working for you, parents, reach out to the school and let them know. Let them know. Maybe they intended for something to work a certain way and it's actually not working that way. So, like, let's communicate, and let's communicate with the same dignity and respect that we want reflected and refracted to us. Those concerns with the school, so that we can figure out solutions together. That old adage is true, 2 heads are better than 1. So I think it's important for us to work together and find places to grow together rather than apart. And I will say, I think it's very suspicious that we would say it's so important. Parents are a child's first educator, and the teachers are so great. They provide us with these different skill sets. And then we consistently try to pit teachers and parents against each other. Are there teachers who are, like, not great, who maybe should retire or leave the profession? Absolutely. Are there parents who maybe they are not great and we would want their children to be with someone who has better skills, etc.? Absolutely. But does that mean that, like, all teachers are bad or all parents are bad? It doesn't. And I think the other thing that was really awesome on this training that I was on was we were talking about power and how power is a lot more fluid than we like to think of it. It's a dynamic concept rather than static. So there are very few people who have absolutely no power all the time, and very few people who have all power all the time. We, in different circumstances, move through places of having power or less power. So that can depend on the information we have available to us, the tools, like, whether the law is on our side, whether, public opinion is on our side, so on and so forth. So we flow and ebb through power. And so in some of our relationships, it's important to think about how we are managing, exercising, and leveraging power. And we have a school system that doesn't work. As someone who used to represent school districts, like, when you are an attorney representing an organization, you're ensuring that the organization as an entity is fine, and not necessarily each individual person. So you all may be familiar with this in the context of your job, right? So maybe you have a job and you work there, and if you're doing something in your official capacity and there's a lawsuit, maybe your job will defend you in that lawsuit, or, they'll bring you under the umbrella of people that they want to protect or ensure are getting the support that they need. And if you don't fall under that sort of umbrella, then you may be advised to go and seek out an attorney for yourself, even though you were at your job doing work that you were assigned to do, right? So it's the same thing in our education system. The education system, the school, the district is the organization. And so a lot of people are making decisions that are beneficial to the district and not necessarily the children or the employees and staff, et cetera, in that entity. And so I think it's important to understand how the structure of that works, because I think it's illuminating why we keep having this tension between parents and teachers who actually really need to work together in order for us to have a excellent education system. But as long as we keep pitting each other as the enemy, our children never really get the full panoply of, like, what they could. And so I just want us to continue to think about education as a team sport. Like, there are different players. Everyone has a position and a role to play. But if we're fighting internally, we don't get a great result. We don't get that win. And then my last thing, and I'm going to jump off here, is that your mindset matters. And mindset matters in virtually everything that you're doing, but especially matters in this back to school season. If you have already decided that virtual learning, like, cannot work, won't work, that children can't learn online, you've decided an outcome already just because you've had that mindset. So what confirmation bias would say is that you're going to pick out the information that supports that, and stay in that space. And then ultimately your child probably won't learn in the remote setting, or they won't learn as much because you've already decided that that's not going to work out. You've probably also expressed that to the child. So now the child is also thinking that that's not going to work. But truly, 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 your mindset matters. Same thing, maybe we could go back to school during a pandemic, but it would probably require us to do things differently and not just resume business as usual. And it's probably going to, not probably, it will absolutely require a greater investment in resources to ensure that that could happen in a safe way for everyone. And so we have to decide as a community whether we're going to be invested in having schools open in person and making sure that we put the money behind what it would take to actually comply with the guidance, which again is also experimental. Like at this point in time, nobody really knows how well this will work, how possible certain things are. But if we want to do either one of these things, we have to commit to it, both in the mindset that like we're going to be able to do this, and we're going to figure out how to make it work, and take the steps that would be required to figure out how to make it work. Just doing what we've always been doing is not going to be sufficient, because the world has shifted, whether you want to accept that or not. And I know change is very difficult, but like we have to keep moving forward, right? We are actually, as mammals, we are able to adapt. And so again, having a flexible mindset, a growth mindset. We always want to tell kids to have a growth mindset, but maybe we as the adults around them also need to adapt a growth mindset and figure out how we can overcome different problems and come up with solutions that are safe, beneficial, and actually lead towards excellence and equity in our education system. So that's all I really have for you. Just 5 things that I have learned or observed from this back to school. Again, science matters. Elections have consequences. Flexibility is required. Education is a team sport, and your mindset matters, probably above and beyond everything else. Our mindset in this season is going to dictate what this looks like for us and for our children. So I just encourage you to be growth oriented, to seek out solutions and not just name all of the problems, and to operate in the world the way you want to, in a way that you would be honored to see down the road. All right. Have a great Thursday.